In August 2025, North America found itself in the grip of a deepening trade clash. What began as targeted tariffs on specific goods has escalated into a continental test of endurance, with ripple effects stretching far beyond borders. Why are tariffs called untenable? Former Canadian Minister of International Trade Mary Ng describes the 35 to 50% tariff levels as untenable for both sides. Her reasoning is pretty straightforward. While such measures raise costs for Canadian exporters, the ultimate burden falls on American importers, manufacturers, and consumers. In an integrated supply chain where 90% of Canadian exports to the United States remain tariff-free under USMCA, the shock is really concentrated in sectors outside the agreement. Furniture, dairy-adjacent goods, processed metals, these are now caught in the crossfire. The result is, well, higher costs for builders, automakers, and retailers across the United States. Canada's counter-strategy can be summed up in 3 words: secure, diversify, defend. Ottawa, under Prime Minister Mark Carney, has refused to rush into a bad deal. Instead, Canada has chosen 3 pillars of response. First, securing compliant trade. Most auto and energy exports remain tariff-free under USMCA, allowing critical industries to keep operating. Second, diversifying markets, strengthening ties with Europe and Asia through the CPTPP and CETA agreements, reducing reliance on the United States. Third, defending at home, providing targeted relief programs to cushion industries against tariff shocks. This strategy sends a clear message. Canada is willing to absorb short-term pain in order to safeguard long-term stability. Ontario's $1 billion lifeline. Ontario Premier Doug Ford rolled out the Protecting Ontario Fund, a $1 billion emergency loan program targeting businesses hardest hit by U.S. tariffs. Eligibility requirements include at least 10 employees, $2 million in annual revenue, and proven use of federal tariff support. The loan range is from $250,000 to $40 million, repayable in 6 years. The purpose? Stabilize payrolls, cover essential costs, and prevent layoffs. U.S. households and businesses, yeah, they're feeling the pinch. While Canada works to shield its economy, U.S. households are bearing the brunt of higher prices. The Yale Budget Lab estimates the 2025 tariff measures will cost American families an additional $2,200 to $3,800 per year. Small businesses are among the first casualties. West Side Kids, the Manhattan toy store featured on CBS News, sourced 90% of its products from China. When tariffs drove costs up, the store could no longer compete with online giants. Its closure became a symbol of how tariffs hit hardest where margins are thinnest. For many families, these economic shifts feel less like abstract policy and more like immediate financial pressure. Higher grocery bills, costlier appliances, and shrinking household budgets. Trump's calculated gamble. On his 200th day in office, President Trump expanded tariffs against dozens of countries, doubling down on a strategy of economic pressure to extract concessions. His approach rests on a belief: make resistance costlier than compliance. Canada, however, is testing that assumption. While tariffs force pain on exporters, Canada's diversified trade ties and domestic supports make it harder for Washington to secure quick wins. Trump has claimed, "We don't need Canadian cars, lumber, or oil." Yet the interdependence of North American energy and manufacturing supply chains tells a different story. Canada supplies millions of barrels of oil daily, along with critical auto parts and raw materials. Cutting off those flows would raise U.S. consumer prices, a risk Washington has so far avoided. The tariff clash with Canada is only one part of a larger confrontation. In parallel, the United States faces growing friction with China, which is countering not with tariffs, but with control over critical minerals and energy resilience. Critical minerals. China controls between 60 and 70% of global rare earth mining and nearly 90% of refining capacity. Since 2024, tightened export rules have disrupted United States defense contractors, delaying jet engine production and honestly raising costs for drone manufacturing. When it comes to energy independence, China has reduced its reliance on United States-monitored sea routes by diversifying oil imports and scaling up renewable energy. In 2024, China imported about 1.4 million barrels a day from Iran, 800,000 from Russia, and 268,000 from Venezuela. all under United States sanctions. By turning sanctioned oil into a resource and reshaping supply chains, Beijing is building resilience against Washington's economic leverage. One of Canada's strongest advantages is energy. Nearly all of its oil exports go to the United States, making it a pillar of American energy security. So far, Washington has avoided imposing tariffs on this sector, not out of goodwill, but out of necessity. If tariffs touched energy, United States gasoline and heating prices would spike. That risk gives Ottawa leverage, allowing it to resist demands while continuing to ship vital resources south. While not directly targeted by new tariffs, Canada's supply management system for dairy has become a flashpoint. Trump has long criticized it as an unfair barrier. Imports from the United States are capped at 3.5% of Canada's market, with tariffs as high as 241% on milk beyond that limit. Yet Canada has drawn a firm line. In 2025, Parliament passed legislation forbidding any government from using supply management as a bargaining chip in trade negotiations. The law has broad support, from Quebec's family-run farms to dairy producers in Alberta and British Columbia. For Ottawa, defending dairy is about more than just milk and butter. It's about protecting rural economies, maintaining political unity, and showing that not every sector can be bargained away. Trump's approach is all about fast, visible wins, tariffs that create immediate leverage, and headline-grabbing announcements. Canada's approach is patience, resilience, and diversification, absorbing short-term pressure to avoid long-term concessions. China's approach is what you'd call systemic adaptation, re-engineering industries to make future trade wars less damaging. Each strategy reflects not just economics, but political realities. Trump needs victories he can present as proof of American strength. Canada and China are playing the long game, ensuring that when concessions come, they are on their terms. The 2025 tariff confrontation is more than a trade dispute. It is really a test of economic endurance, political resolve, and strategic adaptation. For American families, the consequences are immediate: higher bills, fewer local businesses, and uncertainty about jobs. For Canada, it is a chance to prove that diversification and resilience can shield its economy from shocks. For China, it's an opportunity to restructure global supply chains in its favor. The outcome remains uncertain. What is clear is that tariffs have reshaped the tone of global trade, forcing countries to adapt in ways that will outlast the immediate clash. Whether Washington's gamble produces quick victories or backfires under the weight of domestic costs, the world is watching closely.